Forget gurus. Forget anyone claiming to be an online business expert without going through the challenges of entrepreneurship themselves. The Real Money, Real Business podcast is here to prove the best insights in online business comes from your fellow online business builders. We dig into stories of entrepreneurs selling their business on the Empire Flippers marketplace so that you can learn how they made their business profitable, how they overcame obstacles, and what lessons they learned in their online journey. If you want to take your business and your knowledge to the next level, you've come to the right podcast. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Real Money, Real Business podcast. We record these interviews so that potential buyers can learn more about the business and the seller to help them make an informed buying decision. If you would like to learn more about this business, including details like what type of business it is, how much revenue and profit it makes, and all of the assets included with the business, simply visit empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for this business's listing number, which you can find in the video thumbnail and in the description. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, you can click the link in the description to go straight to the listing. So without further ado, let's get into this interview. First up, let's learn a little bit about you. Can you tell us about your background in building and running online businesses?
So I've been in sales and lead generation pretty much my whole life. I'm 32. It's the only thing I've ever done since around 20. So I have around 12 years of experience in this specific space. I founded my first lead generation agency when I was 27. So I've been running agencies for around 5 years. This is the third one. The first one was helping startups at a low ticket price point. And I would say the agency was successful in a sense that I got paid a lot from it. I didn't know anything about business operations then. The inside of the business wouldn't have been very pretty. But as I had good experience in sales and lead generation, the front end worked very well. And, I wouldn't say anyone would have purchased that business, but I was able to make good money on a month-to-month basis. The second agency then was done very, very differently. I ended up having a business partner who made a proposal to me to acqui-hire that previous business. He had a lot of business knowledge, and he said, all right, well, we can take over your business, take over the team, take over the operation, and then this is the 2-year plan. We're going to, charge 3 times as many price points. We're going to niche into a better space. And while you'll have a smaller cut of the company, you'll earn more money. That ended up being a premature ending because the business partner ended up being someone that I shouldn't have trusted. And a year in, then it turned out he was spending money on things that he shouldn't have been spending money on. We had a divide. And although that ended badly, I learned so much from him, from a business aspect, how to run a business, something that people want to buy, and not focusing on you as the main person taking the money, but actually focusing on the business, growing the business as opposed to your own pockets. So that brings me into the third agency now. As soon as the second agency ended and I had the falling out with my business partner, literally the next day, I picked things up from where I left off with that previous agency. And then I just launched the third one. So although this agency will say it's 1.5 years old from its first customer, I would actually say it's 2.5 years old because that's how long I've been focusing on this specific process and market and figuring out all the things there was to figure out to get to this point where someone was wanting to buy it. So I believe a lot in this business specifically. I do think it's going to do very well in the future. And I think there are a huge amount of ways where it could get some very fast revenue, especially if investing in marketing with ads, because the front end of sales is 100% automated. So you don't have to worry about paying for extra salespeople wanting to scale. It can literally do it through the 5-minute recorded webinar and close the leads through automation. The reason I'm selling it is because, I've been doing this for a long time. All the businesses have basically been self-funded whenever there was profit in the business. Although I did take enough to, live how I want to live. I wouldn't say I'm living extravagantly. Everything has gone back into the business. And, although the business is amazing, it's stressful trying to bring it to new levels, right? So if I zoom out, I would be very proud of what's happened month to month, looking at it from a graph. But if I zoom in, there's always new things to learn. And while I'm the one funding everything, the thought right now of having money in the bank and launching a different agency in a different way where there is money to test things and not have to stress about, whether it's going to work or not seems really, really appealing to me. That's everything. Long-winded story. Sorry about that. But ultimately, that should cover pretty much all the nuts and bolts.
Why are you selling the business now instead of keeping it and growing it further?
I think I just covered that in the the ending of the last audio, but just to reemphasize, I do believe in the future of this business, but right now what seems most appealing to me is having money in the bank. And I would still be open to being a partner in the business if the correct buyer is coming in and they agree on the things I'm saying and where it could go. I would absolutely still be a part of the business. However, I'm looking to launch a new agency now with money in the bank and do things in a slightly different way than I have in the past. And ultimately, this agency technically is a year and a half old. I've been doing this for 4 years or 5 years, running across 3 different agencies. And it would just be nice to have some money in the bank now and say that, I have an exit under the books.
Can you describe the amount and the type of work that you do on this business to maintain it?
When the business was launched up until now, for sure, I'm the one who's done the most amount of work inside the business. However, I was always very, very intentional with the type of work I was doing and the types of things I was delegating, because the plan was always to sell the business. So basically, all the work I've ever done was based on building processes. And then once the process was built, it was given to someone to run. Right now, the last thing that I think I did to be able to consider myself delegated out was the reporting structure, which launched around 6 or 8 weeks ago. Every Friday, a report in Asana, a girl called Catherine who manages admin, she sends a report to me with the relevant person or people CC'd under that report. So we have weekly reports and monthly reports. This is what the new owner will need to oversee. So for example, let's say every Friday, there's the LinkedIn lead generation report. And we have very specific things we're tracking, around 5 different things: connection requests sent, messages or connection requests accepted, positive responses received to the messages, people that booked into the recorded webinar, and then people that closed from the recorded webinar. We then underneath it have a green or red. So if it hit the target it's supposed to hit, it will be green. And if it missed it, it will be red. So it's up to the owner coming in to see that those are all green. And if there's ever anything that's red, then they can just put a comment underneath and say, hey, Owen or Ben, why is this red? What do we need to do to get this up next week? And then basically just ensure that there's oversight for everything going on. But ultimately, I am not someone who likes to micromanage. Everything I've built in the business is basically reliant on people who are accountable to their work. We have a daily stand-up. People write in what they're doing for the day. They write in what they completed. And it just basically means I never have to do anything. I don't have weekly meets with anyone. I never really have to ask, what are you doing? Where was this? And if there ever was anyone I had to ask that with, the truth is they just didn't last in the business. So long story short, what the new owner will have to do is just oversee things, be there to chat with the head of customer success, just to provide vision and guidance on where they want to go. If they don't want to grow the business and they just want to collect a paycheck every month for distributions, then I would say 15 minutes of work per week reading those reports. And that is it.
So if you were to keep this business, what are some of the ways you would try to grow it?
I actually have all of these things written down. And I think there are definitely a couple of key ways that could bring the business to the next level. If talking about leads, that's obviously the first thing you're going to look at if wanting to grow the business. Bringing in ads on social media, I think, will be absolutely huge. We did some tests where we spent a couple $100, and I didn't have the pixel set up on the back end, which I found out is needed in order for the system to be able to figure out what's making people convert, what type of buyer profile, and showing it to more people. However, the front end stats of that were amazing in relation to the amount of traffic that was being brought to it and the click-through. So I have reason to believe that ads would take this to a whole new level. And the fact that the closing process, we offer a 1-month free trial. So people just go into a 5-minute recorded webinar. They see what the process does, how it works. They say yes, they book in the call with the account manager, they get started, or else they just don't click in. So there's literally no need to hire any salespeople on this. So if you can get ads going, this will go to a whole new level, in my opinion. Email marketing is another way for nurturing the back end of those leads. I've done a little bit. Every couple of months, I might touch them up. The truth is, they're not being done that well. They are there, but definitely, I would say also some low-hanging fruit. Clay is another one, if incorporating hyper-personalizations or things like that to improve the numbers on the templates, for example. We already have great looking stats, but Clay, I do think, will bring it to another level. More LinkedIn profiles. So all the lead generation is coming from LinkedIn outreach. I mean, obviously, just statistics will tell you if 15 LinkedIn profiles are bringing in this many demos, you double it, you're going to get double the demos. Then Another one is on the recorded webinars. We have, when someone books in, we get their email, we get their first name, we get their last name. There is a field to add the phone number. And I have thought it would probably work very well if hiring a appointment setter or a sales rep and dialing all the people who book in to watch that webinar that don't book in the activation call. I think there's a 20% conversion right now on people that book into that webinar that don't book, 20% that book into the webinar that do book an activation call. So there's literally 80% of people there that don't book the next stage. And if you just hired someone part-time to, call maybe 10 people per day, as soon as they come in, I think that would probably be a pretty good way to get more leads. The other thing is improving client retention. So one thing that I am guilty of is not refining our targeting. The process works and leads come through. So I've never given a huge amount of focus to this because it's always felt like there was more pressing things at hand. However, if targeting a little bit better and going after higher quality coaches, that's going to make a massive difference, because the coaches we work with that are doing, for example, 100K a year, they stay for a really long time. They close their own leads. They're such little management. However, the early stage coaches, the guys who are feeling the pain of spending $500 a month and they're not that good at closing leads, those guys are the ones that churn faster. And right now we kind of just have a wide net. We let people come through, whoever wants to. But for sure, if you can find a way to go after just the higher ticket guys, you'll do way better. Another option is getting a consultant who has closed for coaches before and helping the coaches close a little bit easier. I made a mini training course for the coaches to use when they come on, how to help them close. It's very basic. It's 6 videos, around 2 to 3 minutes each. And I do think it has helped. But for sure, what was obvious in this business from the beginning, that coaches were so easy to generate leads for. However, if they weren't that advanced, they struggled closing out the leads. And at the end of the day, that's going to make the biggest difference. If they're closing and in ROI, they'll be there forever. And if they don't know how to close, they won't. So that's one way to do it. Another option is hiring a closer to close for them. This would just have been a complete test that I don't really know if it will work or not, but it is an idea I had. Contract locks. So obviously we offer 1 month for free. When I first launched the business, we used to do free month, and then if they continued, it locked them in for 3 more months after. Then I reduced it to 2 months to see if it improved the lead generation. Then I reduced it to month to see again if it improves the lead generation. And I've just put it back to 2 months again. So I think that is probably the sweet spot where it's at now. But obviously contract locks, if you can make them give you 3 or 4 months, then they're forced to stay until they have better chances of closing, which does make a big difference. And then higher pricing. So this has been a little bit difficult for me to figure out, just because I don't think I've done a good enough job on the actual targeting. And if you worked, for example, the people who have money, that have established businesses, they pay a higher ticket, obviously. So they don't have any issue. We have a bunch of those guys paying $1,200 per month. If you get the earlier stage coaches, they churn faster and they cringe more at those types of price points. But at the end of the day, I don't think they should even be in the business. So I've tried all types of pricing, $1,500, $1,200, $900. It's on $850 now. We were doing $750 for a while, and kind of just testing things to see what works. But at the end of the day, if you can get the higher ticket coaches, they will pay $1,200 per month for sure. They're already doing it. And I do think that will go hand in hand with the targeting, and a good way to do it. In relation to operations, so before I decided to sell the business, I was working with an AI consultant who was doing a lot of automations in the business. Plan was to give him equity over a year, and he was going to be implementing lots of different automations. Right now, one account manager can manage up to 45 clients, the way the process is set up. He reckoned that he could get them to 60 to 80. So if you could hire someone that specializes in that type of work, there's a lot of money to be made if one account manager can handle double the client spaces, right? Then another one is helping the clients with pre-qualifying leads. We were going to do this with some of the automations, but the way our lead gen setup is done right now, we usually get our clients around 8 to 10 meetings in their very first month in their calendar. However, I'd say around 70% of them are qualified, maybe 60%. So we have a system where we tell them to cancel themselves, because sometimes they might get people coming through that aren't a great fit, because we're offering a free coaching session on behalf of them, which, can bring in random types of people sometimes. And they don't always cancel it themselves. They're not always on top of it. And sometimes it can annoy them if they get a lead that was bad. So if there was a way to have an automation that just canceled on behalf of them, if they didn't meet the qualification criteria, or else just using a form instead of straight to the meeting link, that would work really well as well. And then another thing that could be done is HubSpot upgrades for the clients. We set up a CRM for all of them to track all the leads and deals we bring through. Internally, we have automated HubSpot systems. So they move to a certain deal stage. They're going to get automated email triggers that stays on top of them until they close. That could be massive for the coaches as well.
Right. And what would you say are the biggest risks with this business that buyers should be aware of?
The main thing I can think of is that it's based on one lead source, which is LinkedIn outreach. And I think the first thing I would do if taking over this business is adding a second lead source, which is basically just going to give an insurance policy in case anything ever happened to the main source of leads coming through. For sure, I think the way to go for an additional lead source is ads. And I do think there's room for opportunity with referrals because coaches seem to coach other coaches. And we did try before, going a little bit harder on the referrals, but I don't think it was done that well. And then also the email marketing. So ads, referrals, and email marketing, nurturing the leads in the back end. I would say that would be the first area I would focus to minimize any risk with having LinkedIn as the only lead source.
How much support are you willing to offer the buyer who acquires this business?
It depends on who the buyer is coming in, but I could potentially keep equity in the business. My focus is to cash out and have some money in the bank. But if I believe in what the buyer is going to do with the business and where they're going to go with it, I would be happy to keep equity and be a partner in that business and then help them bring it to where they want to go as an advisor. In relation to the initial period, I've already agreed to provide 30-day support. So I prefer not to have calls is the truth of it. Even the way this business is set up, it's just not something I really do anymore. But I'm going to be, available on Slack. I can send audio notes. I can, share emails. And if something was needed, like a screen share or something, then, I can get on a call, but I would obviously prefer to send looms and things like that. If after that period, there were still things needed from me, then I'm still happy to help the new buyer with whatever they need. I would probably then ask you to be part of consulting so that, I can get paid for my time. But, I'm not just going to disappear. I'm happy to help the buyer do whatever they need to. I also care about the team within the business. I've been working with them for a long time. They're all hardworking. And, I'd also want to make sure that everything goes smoothly for them as well, for whoever is kept in the business and seen as part of the long-term future.
Are you open to negotiating something like an earn-out agreement?
I'm willing to look at any offer, but my focus is getting paid out is the truth of it. So, it really just depends on who the buyer is, what their vision is. Do they want me to keep some part of the business? Do they want me as advisor? What's the reason they don't want to pay the full amount? Is it because they don't have the money, or is it because it's something they've seen in the business? I'm happy to do whatever is fair. But if someone comes through and says, I'm going to pay the full amount, cash up front, that's obviously what I'm looking for. And if not, then, like I said, I'll review all offers and then just respond accordingly.
Okay, final question. If you had to put yourself in the shoes of a buyer, why is your business a business worth buying?
I would say there are 3 things within this business that I think make it very unique. Number 1 is that I've purposely, since day 1, ensured I'm not part of the operations, meaning it's going to be very easy for an owner to come in and just literally take things out of my hands. Then the next is the automated sales process. So it's a recorded webinar and it just closes all the leads that come through it. When I was running the one-on-one demos, I was closing at around 30% of the calls. With the recorded webinar, it does around 20%. However, there's way more people booking into it because obviously it's a lot less friction for someone to check out a 5-minute recording webinar than it is to book into a 30-minute sales call with someone. So basically, you can just add more leads and put petrol on the fire and it will just take off. Then the next thing is I'm very proud of the team. So it's a small core team now. It was literally 14 employees at one point. Now it's basically 3.5. And everyone is just very self-reliant. We have a daily stand-up where every morning people write in what I'm working for the day. They write a bulleted list of what they're doing. At the end of the day, they write my progress. They put a tick beside what they did, an X beside what they didn't do. And it just keeps people accountable. I don't have any one-on-one meetings with anyone. I never have to micromanage. Everyone just does what they're supposed to. And the process through Asana, through daily stand-up, through all those things just ensures that people are just on top of their own work and basically requires very, very little management.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. To learn more and see if this business is still for sale, head over to empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for this business listing number, which you can find in the video thumbnail and description. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, click the link in the description to go straight to the listing. Once you've unlocked this listing, you'll find everything you need to know about this business. So, thanks for joining us. See you next time.